They say that Ra, when he became aware of Nut's intercourse with Geb, invoked a curse upon her that she should not give birth to a child in any month or year, but Thoth, being enamored of the goddess, consorted with her. Later, playing at draughts with Yah, he won from the moon 70th part of each of its periods of illumination, and from all the winnings he composed 5 days, and intercalated them as an addition to the 360 days. The Egyptians even now call these 5 days intercalated and celebrate them as the birthdays of the gods. They relate that on the first of these days Osiris was born, and at the hour of his birth a voice issued forth saying, "The Lord of all advances to the light." On the second of these days Horus the elder was born. On the third day Set was born, but not in due season or manner. But with a blow he broke through his mother's side and leapt forth. On the fourth day Isis was born in the regions that are ever moist. And on the fifth, Nephthys, to whom they give the name of finality. They relate, moreover, that Nephthys became the wife of Set, but Isis and Osiris were enamored of each other and consorted together in the darkness of the womb before their birth. One of the first acts related of Osiris in his reign was to deliver the Egyptians from their destitute and brutish manner of living. This he did by showing them the fruits of cultivation, by giving them laws, and by teaching them to honor the gods. Later he traveled over the whole earth, civilizing it without the slightest need of arms, but most of the peoples he won over to his way by the charm of his persuasive discourse, combined with song and all manner of music. During his absence, the tradition is that Set attempted nothing revolutionary because Isis, who was in control, was vigilant and alert. But when he returned home, Set contrived a treacherous plot against him and formed a group of conspirators, 72 in number. He had also the cooperation of a queen from Ethiopia who was there at the time, and whose name they report as Aso. Set, having secretly measured the body of Osiris, and having made ready a beautiful chest of corresponding size, artistically ornamented, caused it to be brought into the room where the festivity was in progress. The company was much pleased at the sight of it and admired it greatly, whereupon Set jestingly promised to present it to the man who should find the chest to be exactly his length when he lay down in it. They all tried it in turn, but no one fitted it. Then Osiris got into it and lay down, and those who were in the plot ran to it and slammed down the lid, which they fastened by nails from the outside, and also by using molten lead. Then they carried the chest to the river and sent it on its way to the sea through the Tinnitic mouth, wherefore the Egyptians, even to this day, name this mouth the hateful and execrable. Such is the tradition. They say also that Osiris was in the 28th year of his reign, but some say that these are the years of his life, and not of his reign. They relate also that Isis, learning that Osiris, in his love, had consorted with her sister through ignorance, in the belief that she was Isis, and seeing the proof of this in the garland of Melilote, which he had left with Nephthys, sought to find the child. For the mother, immediately after its birth, had exposed it because of her fear of Set, and when the child had been found, after great toil and trouble, with the help of dogs which led Isis to it, it was brought up, and became her guardian and attendant, receiving the name of Anubis, and it is said to protect the gods, just as dogs protect men. Thereafter Isis, as they relate, learned that the chest had been cast up by the sea near the land of Papyrus, and that the waves had gently set it down in the midst of a clump of heather. As they relate, Isis proceeded to her son Horus, who was being reared in Buto, and bestowed the chest in a place well out of the way. But Set, who was hunting by night in the light of the moon, happened upon it. Recognizing the body, he divided it into 14 parts and scattered them, each in a different place. Isis learned of this and sought for them again, sailing through the swamps in a boat of papyrus. This is the reason why people sailing in such boats are not harmed by the crocodiles, since these creatures in their own way show either their fear or their reverence for the goddess. The traditional result of Osiris's dismemberment is that there are many so-called tombs of Osiris in Egypt, for Isis held a funeral for each part when she had found it. Others deny this and assert that she caused effigies of him to be made, and these she distributed among the several cities, pretending that she was giving them his body in order that he might receive divine honors in a greater number of cities, and also that, if Set should succeed in overpowering Horus, he might despair of ever finding the true tomb when so many were pointed out to him, all of them called the Tomb of Osiris. Later, as they relate, Osiris came to Horus from the other world and exercised and trained him for the battle. Now the battle, as they relate, lasted many days, and Horus prevailed. Set formally accused Horus of being an illegitimate child, but with the help of Thoth to plead his cause, it was decided by the gods that he also was legitimate. Set was then overcome in 2 other battles. Stories akin to these, and to others like them, they say, are related about Set, how that, prompted by jealousy and hostility, he wrought terrible deeds, and by bringing utter confusion upon all things, filled the whole earth and the ocean as well with ills, and later paid the penalty therefor. The Egyptians, because of their belief that Set was of a red complexion, also dedicate to sacrifice such of their neat cattle as are of a red color, but they conduct the examination of these so scrupulously that if an animal has but one hair black or white, they think it wrong to sacrifice it, for they regard as suitable for sacrifice not what is dear to the gods, but the reverse, namely such animals as have incarnate in them souls of unholy and unrighteous men who have been transformed into other bodies. And thus among the Egyptians, such men say that Osiris is the Nile consorting with the earth, which is Isis, and that the sea is set into which the Nile discharges its waters, and is lost to view and dissipated, save for that part which the earth takes up and absorbs, and thereby becomes fertilized. But the wiser of the priests call not only the Nile Osiris and the sea Set, but they simply give the name of Osiris to the whole source and faculty creative of moisture, believing this to be the cause of generation and the substance of life-producing seed. And the name of Set they give to all that is dry, fiery, and arid in general, and antagonistic to moisture. Therefore, because they believe that he was personally of a reddish, sallow color, they are not eager to meet men of such complexion, nor do they like to associate with them. Osiris, on the other hand, according to their legendary tradition, was dark, because water darkens everything, earth and clothes and clouds, when it comes into contact with them. In young people, the presence of moisture renders their hair black, while grayness, like a paleness as it were, is induced by dryness in those who are passing their prime. Also, the springtime is vigorous, prolific, and agreeable, but the autumn, since it lacks moisture, is inimical to plants and unhealthful for living creatures. For this reason, all who reverence Osiris are prohibited from destroying a cultivated tree or blocking up a spring of water. Not only the Nile, but every form of moisture they call simply the effusion of Osiris. And in their holy rites, the water jar in honor of the god heads the procession. And by the picture of a rush, they represent a king and the southern region of the world, and the rush is interpreted to mean the watering and fructifying of all things, and in its nature, it seems to bear some resemblance to the generative member. In fact, the tale that is annexed to the legend to the effect that Set cast the male member of Osiris into the river, and Isis could not find it, but constructed and shaped a replica of it, and ordained that it should be honored and borne in processions, plainly comes round to this doctrine, that the creative and germinal power of the god, at the very first, acquired moisture as its substance, and through moisture combined with whatever was by nature capable of participating in generation. As they regard the Nile as the effusion of Osiris, so they hold and believe the earth to be the body of Isis, not all of it, but so much of it as the Nile covers, fertilizing it and uniting with it. From this union they make Horus to be born. The outmost parts of the land beside the mountains and bordering on the sea the Egyptians call Nephthys. This is why they give to Nephthys the name of finality, and say that she is the wife of Set. Whenever then the Nile overflows and with abounding waters spreads far away to those who dwell in the outermost regions, they call this the union of Osiris with Nephthys, which is proved by the upspringing of the plants. Among these is the Melilitus, by the wilting and failing of which, as the story goes, Set gained knowledge of the wrong done to his bed. So Isis gave birth to Horus in lawful wedlock, but Nephthys bore Anubis clandestinely. However, in the chronological lists of the kings, they record that Nephthys, after her marriage to Set, was at first barren. If they say this, not about a woman, but about the goddess, they must mean by it the utter barrenness and unproductivity of the earth, resulting from a hard-baked soil. The insidious scheming and usurpation of Set, then, is the power of drought, which gains control and dissipates the moisture which is the source of the Nile and of its rising. And his coadjutor, the queen of the Ethiopians, signifies allegorically the south winds from Ethiopia. For whenever these gain the upper hand over the northerly or Etesian winds, which drive the clouds towards Ethiopia, and when they prevent the falling of the rains which cause the rising of the Nile, then Set, being in possession, blazes with scorching heat, and having gained complete mastery, he forces the Nile, in retreat, to draw back its waters for weakness, and flowing at the bottom of its almost empty channel, to proceed to the sea. The story told of the shutting up of Osiris in the chest seems to mean nothing else than the vanishing and disappearance of water. Consequently, they say that the disappearance of Osiris occurred in the month of Hathor, at the time when, owing to the complete cessation of the Etesian winds, the Nile recedes to its low level, and the land becomes denuded. As the nights grow longer, the darkness increases, and the potency of the light is abated and subdued. That among the gloomy rites which the priests perform, they shroud the gilded image of a cow with a black linen vestment, and display her as a sign of mourning for the goddess, inasmuch as they regard both the cow and the earth as the image of Isis. And this is kept up for 4 days consecutively, beginning with the 17th of the month. The things mourned for are 4 in number. First, the departure and recession of the Nile. Second, the complete extinction of the north winds, as the south winds gain the upper hand. Third, the days growing shorter than the night. And to crown all, the denudation of the earth, together with the defoliation of the trees and shrubs at this time. On the 19th day, they go down to the sea at nighttime, and the keepers of the robes and the priests bring forth the sacred chest, containing a small golden coffer, into which they pour some potable water which they have taken up, and a great shout arises from the company for joy that Osiris is found. Then they knead some fertile soil with the water, and mix in spices and incense of a very costly sort, and fashion therefrom a crescent-shaped figure which they clothe and adorn, thus indicating that they regard these gods as the substance of earth and water. When Isis recovered Osiris and was watching Horus grow up, as he was being made strong by the exhalations and mists and clouds, Set was vanquished but not annihilated, for the goddess who holds sway over the earth would not permit the complete annihilation of the nature opposed to moisture, but relaxed and moderated it, being desirous that its tempering potency should persist, because it was not possible for a complete world to exist if the fiery element left it and disappeared. Moreover, all the springs and wells, of which there are many, have a saline and brackish water, as if some stale dregs of the ancient sea had collected there. But in time, Horus overpowered Set. That is to say, there came on a timely abundance of rain, and the Nile forced out the sea and revealed the fertile land, which it filled out with its alluvial deposits. This has support in the testimony of our own observation, for we see even today, as the river brings down new silt and advances the land, that the deep waters gradually recede, and as the bottom gains in height by reason of the alluvial deposits, the water of the sea runs off from these. But the Egyptians, by combining with these physical explanations some of the scientific results derived from astronomy, think that by Set is meant the solar world, and by Osiris the lunar world. They reason that the moon, because it has a light that is generative and productive of moisture, is kindly towards the young of animals and the burgeoning plants, whereas the sun, by its untempered and pitiless heat, makes all growing and flourishing vegetation hot and parched, and, through its blazing light, renders a large part of the earth uninhabitable, and in many a region overpowers the moon. In fact, the actions of the moon are like actions of reason and perfect wisdom, whereas those of the sun are like beatings administered through violence and brute strength. The Egyptians have a legend that the end of Osiris's life came on the 17th of the month, on which day it is quite evident to the eye that the period of the full moon is over. Some say that the years of Osiris's life, others that the years of his reign were 28, for that is the number of the moon's illuminations, and in that number of days does she complete her cycle. The wood which they cut on the occasions, called the burials of Osiris, they fashion into a crescent-shaped coffer, because of the fact that the moon, when it comes near the sun, becomes crescent-shaped and disappears from our sight. The dismemberment of Osiris into 14 parts, they refer allegorically to the days of the waning of that satellite, from the time of the full moon to the new moon, and the day on which she becomes visible after escaping the solar rays and passing by the sun, they style incomplete good. For Osiris is beneficent, and his name means many things, but not least of all, an active and beneficent power, as they put it. The Apis, they say, is the animate image of Osiris, and he comes into being when a fructifying light thrusts forth from the moon and falls upon a cow in her breeding season. Wherefore there are many things in the Apis that resemble features of the moon, his bright parts being darkened by the shadowy. Moreover, at the time of the new moon in the month of Phammonoth, they celebrate a festival to which they give the name of Osiris's coming to the moon, and this marks the beginning of the spring. Thus they make the power of Osiris to be fixed in the moon, and say that Isis, since she is generation, is associated with him. For as they believe, the destructive activity of Set does not always prevail, but oftentimes is overpowered by such generation and put in bonds, and then at a later time is again released and contends against Horus, who is the terrestrial universe. And this is never completely exempt, either from dissolution or from generation. There are some who give the name of Set to the earth's shadow, into which they believe the moon slips when it suffers eclipse. Hence it is not unreasonable to say that the statement of each person individually is not right, but that the statement of all collectively is right. For it is not drought, nor wind, nor sea, nor darkness, but everything harmful and destructive that nature contains, which is to be set down as a part of Set. The fact is that the creation and constitution of this world is complex, resulting, as it does, from opposing influences, which, however, are not of equal strength, but the predominance rests with the better. Yet it is impossible for the bad to be completely eradicated, since it is innate in large amount in the body, and likewise in the soul of the universe, and is always fighting a hard fight against the better. So in the soul, intelligence, and reason, the ruler and lord of all that is good is Osiris, and in earth and wind and water and the heavens and stars, that which is ordered, established, and healthy, as evidenced by season, temperatures, and cycles of revolution, is the efflux of Osiris and his reflected image. But Set is that part of the soul which is impressionable, impulsive, irrational, and truculent, and of the bodily part, the destructible, diseased, and disorderly, as evidenced by abnormal seasons and temperatures, and by obscurations of the sun and disappearances of the moon, outbursts, as it were, and unruly actions on the part of Set.